Manhunt is a 2003 stealth and survival horror game, originally released for the PlayStation 2 in November 2003, and for Microsoft Windows on Xbox April 2004. Set within the fictional Carcer City, the story follows James Earl Cash, a death row prisoner who is forced to participate in a series of snuff films made by a sadistic director with ties to corrupt law enforcement. The game is best remembered for the controversy it generated for its developer, Rockstar North. In it, you assume the role of death row inmate James Earl Cash. We're never told why Cash is on death row, if he's guilty of whatever crime he is there for or not. Cash speaks in a couple of cutscenes late in the story, but otherwise he's silent as the protagonist. All we really know about him is that he was there, and his execution was faked by corrupt prison officials so he can star in the snuff films for director Lionel Starkweather. As Cash, Starkweather has a network of thugs you are meant to fight your way through, promising you your freedom if you kill enough of the henchmen he has lined up across the derelict buildings and institutions in Carcer City. While he claims this is all about selling his black market snuff films, Starkweather is clearly a psychopath, a sadist, a complete pig who delights in the suffering of other people. This is conveyed in some of the bonus material you unlock, as well as in the game's instruction book, which is written as a catalog for the snuff movies being produced. He's portrayed as a disgraced Hollywood director who was thrown out of the legit movie industry. The best conveyor of what a monster Starkweather is certainly the voice performance of Brian Cox, legendary actor who originally played Hannibal Lecter in the film version of Thomas Harris's Red Dragon, Manhunter, same title as Manhunt. No relation to the game, but that's kind of a neat meta note. As you are forced from one brutal scene to the next, the director talks to you through an earpiece, and the more bloody things get, the more overjoyed he is to watch.
Just like you. And they're here to hunt you down and cut you up. I'll try to direct you as best I can, but other than that, you're on your own. It's up to you.
Cox treats the role 100% serious, to his credit as an actor, during a time when legit Hollywood stars didn't just turn up in video games. I picked it up long before any of that had exploded on the media based on an advertisement I saw on TV. The commercial didn't convey the nature of the story I just described, but the images definitely described something horror related, which I was all about. I got the game and I really enjoyed it, and I also really enjoyed replaying it on the PS4 recently, so I thought I would make the Little Line documentary that I tend to do after playthroughs and describe the game, its controversy, and how it looks now. Rockstar is best known for its Grand Theft Auto series, which is a huge franchise, and even now has a huge following. I've never been a fan, and I've only played a little bit of one GTA game. It was kind of that thing where the most obnoxious fans of something turn you off from wanting to find out more. I just never got on board. GTA was controversial in its own right due to the fact that it has a linear story, but it also has like an open world component where players can engage in all kinds of murder and mayhem rather than play the hero role in the game. This was subject to much talk at the time in many news mediums. Where Manhunt pushes the envelope further than GTA 3 is that in GTA 3, the player has the right to be a good guy or not. You don't have to run over civilians or shoot them, or some people choose to. In Manhunt, you are forced to do all sorts of terrible things to all sorts of terrible people, and it's not optional, it's the game. Placing the player in that position is quite different than allowing them to choose. So, coupling that with the fact that the actual violence is shown, very gruesome and graphic, the controversy seems inevitable. If you took all the blood and gore out of Manhunt, it would still be a very bleak, nihilistic game. The gore, however, also is not run-of-the-mill on its own. You don't have to just kill bad guys in grisly ways, you do it by sneaking up on them and executing them, as Starkweather says. The game and story mechanic is that there are multiple levels of executions. When you sneak up on an enemy, the longer you hold down the execute button, the more brutal the execution will be. The brutality is actually color-coded, white, yellow, and red, so you know what you're doing as you're doing it. As you can imagine, this was quite controversial at the time, and that controversy extended beyond both straight and gaming press. California Congressman Joe Baca sponsored legislation to fine vendors for selling the game, which was rated M, mature, people under 17. Various news outlets called the game a, quote, murder simulator, and where you just, quote, stack up bodies. The Chicago Tribune compared the game to Custer's Revenge and Leisure Suit Larry, as if it were somehow pornographic. In my native Michigan here, a local man tried to file a lawsuit against Rockstar, claiming emotional distress due to the game's effect on him. I wish I could find some video on that, because the interview with the guy, when I saw it on TV, was comedy gold, even then, but the biggest controversy was yet to come. In 2004, a 17-year-old in Great Britain killed his 14-year-old friend. It was alleged that police found in the killer's room a copy of the Manhunt game, and in an interview his parents blamed that game for what happened. The game was pulled from the UK shelves due to the controversy. It was also banned in other places known for censorship of games and art, like Australia, New Zealand, and Germany. It became the first game to be restricted to adults only in Canada. Noted disbarred attorney and anti-video game crusader Jack Thompson represented the victim's family in a lawsuit against Sony and Rockstar, claiming the game had caused the murder. Unfortunately for them, the same day they filed, the police released a statement that the game had nothing to do with the murder, which was actually about drugs, a dispute about drugs. They also went on to clear up that the game had not been found in the perpetrator's room, but in the victim's room. So the lawsuit was dropped shortly after. The game was written by Alan Davidson and James Worrall. Davidson designed the levels and Worrall wrote most of the cutscene dialogue. Both creators are veterans of the GTA series and had a long history with Rockstar. Manhunt used the same game engine as GTA 3, so it was mostly familiar territory. The story itself is credited to Christian Cantamesa, who started his career in games as the writer of 2001's cult classic Watchmaker. In addition to his work on Manhunt and the GTA series, he went on to write Red Dead Redemption, another open-world smash in video games. Speaking on the inspiration for the game, Cantamesa told IGN in an interview, quote, "We want to create a game that delivers a scathing social commentary on media voyeurism, the peddling of violence as entertainment, and the inbred accuracy of the American penal system. Some would argue that they may not quite have hit the mark if a satire of peddling violence was the target. Alan Davidson's take on the game is somewhat more on the mark, if less nuanced. Quote, we wanted to create an effed up game using AI-controlled gangs hunting the player, and it just snowballed from there." End quote. The game was coded by veteran Rockstar programmers John White, Obey Vermege, and Adam Fowler. It was produced by Adam Hay and Leslie Benzies, both collaborators on the GTA series as well. One of my favorite things about the game is its creepy minimal score, which was composed by Craig Connor. Connor also oversaw the recording of the gruesome sound effects. The thuds and squishes of hunters being pummeled and hacked were created with fruit and meat being smashed and chopped, giving those wet, realistic, disturbing sounds in the executions. For voice talent, Rockstar used the winner of a contest, a photographer named Stephen Wilfong, to voice Cash. The role remains his only credit in IMDb. For the role of the reporter, the voice talents of Kate Miller were tapped. Miller is still active in voicing games. She recently recorded dialogue for God of War Ragnarok. She has over 100 credits in games, films, TV shows, and Broadway, stretching back to the early 90s. To voice the hobo that Cash must escort through the drunk driving level, Mark Margolis provides the dialogue, although he's uncredited on the sleeve. Margolis is best known for his portrayal of Tio Salmonica in Breaking Bad, as well as the role of the hitman Alberto in the film Scarface. The most important voice in the game, by far the one you hear the most, is that of the homicidal director Starkweather, provided by character actor Brian Cox. Cox is in tons of great movies, and this was hardly a big break for him. By 2003, he had already done Braveheart, Bourne Identity, Super Troopers, Desperate Measures, so I have to believe he just did it to push the boundaries. That's like my sense of why he would get involved in such a project. The whole game hinges on his performance, in my opinion. It's an outstandingly charismatic performance. I'd compare it to like Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange. Without the way he brings Starkweather to life, this is just an exercise in random violence. With his narrative as the villain, this just truly repugnant narcissist that's so vile, he easily makes death row thug James Earl Cash the baby's face in this story. It all falls kind of flat if he doesn't deliver, and he really does. It's pretty amazing. In a deleted blog post, Rockstar employee Jeff Williams claimed that Even the game's staff was somewhat uncomfortable about Manhunt's level of violence. Quote, "There was almost a mutiny at the company over that game. It, quote, just made us all feel icky. It was all about the violence, and it was realistic violence. We all knew there was no way we could explain away the game. There was no way to rationalize it. We were crossing a line," end quote. It's not clear what prompted him to retract his statements, but people who worked on the project came forward to dispute them. Greg Connor said in an interview with IGN, quote, "I don't really want to get tangled up in the Manhunt controversy. All I'll say is that a lot of very talented people worked very hard to make Manhunt what it was. It was a shame that the controversy overshadowed what we created, a great horror slasher game in my opinion. I think I can speak for most of my friends at Rockstar when saying that our main focus was always to make a great game that we wanted to play. If that's controversial, then so be it," end quote. Christian Cantamesa, perhaps the most personally connected to the game as the writer of the story, tweeted upon its release on PlayStation Network. Quote, "Manhunt was my first big game. It has a special, dark place in my heart. Great to see people still remember it." Replaying the game recently, I found that it holds up pretty well. That is to say that my impression of it wasn't diminished by the fact that gaming technology and storytelling have improved since 2003, but it's really difficult for me to describe how it was to play it at that time. I mean, it was dark and visceral, and playing it alone at night really cranked up the adrenaline. The jump scares and the tension and the scary good AI of the hunters, especially for that era. It was just a thrill to play. It was just like a new experience in gaming for me, and it blasted away the idea that games are just for kids, because this one was definitely off limits for mine. If you have the stomach for it, I would recommend checking it out. And if you're just a horror fan who's not really interested in video games, if you could get the hang of the controls, I think you would really enjoy this experience, because it really was something different. I mean, it really does kind of hold up in that regard. So those are my thoughts on Manhunt. If you just blundered into this documentary, this is part of a list you can check out where we did a playthrough of both levels of difficulty. The fetish, which is easier, and the hardcore, which is the harder. And that was a lot of fun. Recommend checking that out. We keep all the cutscenes in, so you can just kind of get the feel of the story if you want. And I don't do very much talking at all. So, also, if you wouldn't mind liking or subscribing or commenting or something like that, that's always appreciated. I don't have anything else to shout out because I don't do this for money. It's just for fun. Let me know your thoughts, and we'll check back again in the future.